my voice without the mic?
Yeah, great.
So you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you understand me?
Yeah.
Sure about that?
No.
Okay. It's fifth week number 6, and what we will do today is related to modal reduction. So really the modal reduction, if picking up one subject matter that is important in a written exam, it is obviously modal reduction. And now again, the list of questions, I don't have it with me, but we will take a look at those in next week. And again, the idea is that you will see all the questions, and in week 8, which is after 2 weeks, we're gonna go through the list. Make sure you can answer each one of these questions in a way that you score, 5 out of 5 on midterm exam. Each one of the questions. And then if there is something that you feel that is extremely difficult, then you have an opportunity to vote that off from the list. And then we also agree that we can also vote one question that will, for 100% certainty, will be in the question list. So then you can really be sure that at least you can answer that correctly. Rest, we'll see. Okay, so those are the rules. And again, to make it even more enjoyable in your side, if you are not happy with your performance, you can come and negotiate with me. So you can try to build the case to upgrade your points from the exam. And if you take your mom, dad, boyfriend, friend with you, then that can help. No guarantee, but it can help.
Who do you prefer most, mom or dad?
That doesn't matter. You can pick the one you like the most. But mom or dad must yell to you. That's the requirement. Okay? Like really like, oh no, good teacher. So, my son or daughter is an outstanding student, but your teaching is no good. So look at this, what happened. So, okay. Now, so today we're going to look at really today is a core content what comes to the first period. This is really the most important thing. Then, next, the one thing that is missing here is that Thursday there is this visiting lecture from Martin Spot. Are you able to participate? You are. Very good. He is a good teacher. I don't know if you checked his website, but he's been in this famous TED talk, talking about, surprisingly, bicycle dynamics. So he is all about the bicycle dynamics. So he will tell a little bit about big picture about the bicycle dynamics. And yes, it might sound that it is that relation of bicycle and mechanical engineering is they don't get along, but yes, they get along. There's a lot of things that make sense. And it's a good, funny subject matter to discuss. Okay, this is a bit too small. It's a little bit small, so. Okay. Okay, so like this. All right, so then prior to jumping to new matters to discuss, let's summarize what we discussed last week. Last week we really look at what's the essence of the finite element method. And we concluded that the finite element method is really based on polynomial expansion. Is really what tells how the finite element performs. And that is actually expressed by using a polynomial expansion. And I didn't discuss if there's any alternatives for polynomials. Like if you're not comfortable with polynomials, maybe you could use trigonometric functions or nerves or whatever. Is it possible? Yes, it is theoretically possible. But polynomials comes with a certain features that makes them superior against the other representations. And what makes them superior is the possibility to be continuous. And they are mathematically very easy to deal with. Differentiating polynomials this is what they teach in preschool, I guess. At the age of 6, you learn how to differentiate the polynomials like this, right? Oh, what is wrong with my drawings? Here, no, here, insert. Where was the drawing? I got lost. Design, is it design? No. Drawings are missing. Ink. Where do you see that?
Last.
Last one?
Yeah.
PDF.
Here. Oh, yeah. No, not that, not that. Why is it here? Pen. Here, this one, yes. No, still not.
You didn't choose.
Is it on? Erasing is on. Huh. Why is it behaving like this?
Maybe I did.
So what is that I need to do?
Maybe.
Maybe you need to select a different. No.
Choose this. What? Choose it.
It used to be. It used to look a little different. Sheer colors, thickness. No. Maybe because this is selected now, so let me just take it off. Can you take off this selection? Oh my God, this is a very painful now. So highlighter, so let's select highlight. No. Select object. Now this is somehow selected and it's not allowing me to select anything else. Now it's okay. No. Should I just close this and put it back again? Okay. Let's see. Maybe it was about some of the selections that I made in the very beginning. No. Okay. Ink is missing. Enable. Should I keep this enable content?
Yes.
Okay, ink. Paint. Still not selected. Oh my God, what a painful thing. Select objects. Color. Okay, never mind. So let me just explain this. So polynomials are simple to differentiate. That's a really nice feature of it. You know, kind of like what you can learn from this equation that is top of this one here, is really the. Okay, so the finite German method is all about these polynomials. What we could do in a finite German method is that we can express these unknowns, which are A0, A1, A2, and A4, in this particular case, to be our unknowns all the time. The problem is that if you select them to be unknowns all the time, they don't have a clear physical interpretation. But now, you know that in computer graphics, most of the graphics are developed and made by using non-uniform B-splines, NURBS. That's the kind of the technology behind of the GAC software. NURBS, non-uniform rational B-splines. Rational B-splines. I think I missed the rational last time that I mentioned it. But they are non-uniform rational B-splines. But that's how you can create any kind of shapes you want. Now the big challenge in the finite German method is that most of the tasks you do in a finite German modeling is that you get the graphics, geometry, from those GAC softwares, and then you wanted to mesh that geometry. Say that you have a geometry like line like this, and you wanted to set the beam elements to be along the line that is predefined. Well, that's a simple task. You can easily make that. But then once you have more complicated geometries, it becomes actually a challenging task. And it's a challenging task because there's two things that are not get along well. NURBS, non-uniform rational B-splines, and polynomials. They are kind of cousins. but cousins that are not get along. You know, every now and then there are families that are not get along well. You know, when there's a family get together, there's always fights. First drinking alcohol, then fights, then police comes. These are exactly like that. You know, they don't get along so well. And this is what causing these messy problems in finite element method. Now, people has realized that actually solving the finite element model itself, I mean solving deformation, solving the responses, takes just a fraction of the time. So it's not the great challenge, but creating the mess. That is a great challenge. And of course, that's the task that takes most of the time. And that's why there is a new trend in the finite element community, where they actually are doing something to these polynomials. And instead of using polynomials, they're using rational non-uniform B-splines to express the inherent nature of one element. That means that this, isn't this one? No, it's not one. This one here is replaced by NURBS. Why they do that? Because it allows the better match graphics that is coming from the CAD software and finite element method. It comes with another difficulty. We're not going to discuss about that. But this, using NURBS, it is actually kind of like a finite element or research line in a finite element community, which is called isogeometric analysis. So it's a geometrics that is easy to describe by using this method. We are not going to touch that. We are not going to look at that. But instead, we're going to take the polynomial as you express it, and then we're going to take the unknowns in the polynomials and express those with help of nodal degrees of freedom. And when doing this trick, we get something that is called safe functions. Safe functions is really the soul of finite elements. Really they're telling how is they behave, how is their behavior. They have a certain pattern to behave, and that pattern to behave is tattooed inside of their mind with safe functions. That's how it goes. Here, this example, I'm using this third order polynomial to express the behavior of the beam element that originally consists of 4 degrees of freedom, 2 degrees of freedom at each one of the nodal locations. And now, when I'm using these polynomials to create the safe functions looks like these ones. No, God, this is, should I select this? Can I select this? Should I just insert something here? Insert safes. Ah. No, this is not very good. No, not a good idea. Design. Let's try this again. Why this? I've never seen anything like that to happen. So let's erase. No, it's not selecting anything else in this. Okay, now it's selected. So happy? No, not happy. I don't know, this is really weird. So I can select all this, but I cannot select the pen. Any ideas what to do?
Select the object with some lines and pen.
This one?
No, the right side of the select object.
This one?
No, right side. Oh, okay.
These ones?
Yeah.
No, still nothing. No, it's just keep on moving my stuff. Is it because of there are some animations? I don't really know. Okay, let me try to wrap up this, and then maybe I need to restart my computer. I mean, PowerPoint at least. Okay, now look at this. So using this polynomial, we have 4 different safe functions, 4 different ways that the element can perform. And now something that is important to understand, that these 4 different ways are different ways. So they are not mixing nodal degrees of freedom. An example is this. When you look at this save functions here, this one, yeah, you can see that I'm selecting that. In this particular case, I'm introducing nodal displacement to one nodal decrease of freedom. Others are with no change whatsoever. So there is a displacement in this y direction, this direction. But when you look at the derivative here, it's actually equal to 0. Displacement here, this end here, can you see this point? It's 0, and the displacement, the derivative here too is 0. Now the second decrease of freedom is a rotation in this end, this left hand side. Now when I'm introducing the rotation, displacement here remains 0. Derivatives here remains 0, and displacement here remains 0. So it's really a different ways that the structure, element can deform. So now if I'm asking you, what is an interpretation of save function? Do you know it?
Behavior.
So you can say yes or no. Do you know it, or should I repeat it? What is an interpretation of save function? Do you know it? No. It's yes or no? It's yes or no. So it's kind of, but not sure. Okay. Save functions are telling you, well, what are the different ways that the element can deform. Those are the different ways that the element can deform. Give you an example. So this element only have a displacement and decrease of freedom in a transverse direction, in this direction. I'm sorry that I need to use the drawings like this. So element is this length, it only can move in this direction. So what about axial stress? Is that as a decrease of freedom for this system? No, because it is missing from the save functions. It's not there. There is no way that it can stretch because it's missing. When you look at the figures, doesn't matter how much you add them up, still missing, still not there. So it's not the way that the element can deform. So it only can deform, displacement this direction and rotation. Those are the ways. So the summary that the save functions are telling you the way element can deform. It's the way they can deform, element can deform. Clear? Do you understand what is an interpretation of save functions? Yes? Yes? Okay, okay. So let's go on. So, what's here, so is it now? Alright, physical interpretation of save functions. So, let me put the Socrative on. And I started a new hobby. I have a new hobby now. And it's, I need to put it on, so just a second. This one, I need to go down here. This one, 1 of 10. Yes, 1 of 10. Okay. All right, so here it goes. So, physical interpretation of save functions show the way that an element can deform. That's the first option. Defines the connection between neighboring elements. That's the option number of D. Defines strain displacement relationship. That's C. No clear physical interpretation. No clear interpretation, that's final option D. Only one is correct. What is correct? Alright. Then, I know that I'm kind of slow today, but we'll catch up a bit later. So should we take, again, I was about to tell about my new hobby. My new hobby is this. What?
Close the separative as the answer.
Still don't hear you, so what was that?
I think closing the separative as soon as answer comes.
Okay, so 5 students are still thinking. What, you say that I can close this or?
Counting the points up.
Counting points. Yeah, that's not my new hobby. My new hobby is Yeah, it is my new hobby too. But in addition to that hobby, I have one more hobby. I'm about to become active member in a Twitter community. Have you ever heard about that, Twitter? I've been semi-active member in a community. I've been in a community 5 years and I already made one tweet. So that's makes me like semi-active. But I want to take myself to pro level, meaning one tweet per week. I'm thinking that I'm already dreaming what is my this week tweet. You know what it is?
100%.
Correct. You're my man. So it's entitled as 100% success rate. So we'll see how it works out. So in that hobby, I need your cooperation a little bit. So can you help me in that? We'll see. Okay, so 2 students are still thinking? No, just thinking what is how is the lighting condition? Can I get a good picture, selfie picture? I need to think about that. Okay, 3 students are still thinking. Let's leave this for a little while. And let me close this discussion now. Okay. All right. Now, once you create the equation of motion based on the finite element method, this is how it actually eventually reads. This is the equation of motion based on finite element method. It's not cooperating, but that's fine. So what I have there is inertia forces plus elastic forces equal than externally applied forces. Okay, so that's what it is. Now I could use this equation as it is to solve my deformation. But it comes with a problem. It comes along with a problem. And the problem is that, once I solve the acceleration from this equation here, I can read the acceleration as it is shown here, and this tells me every single nodal location, how it is behaving as a function of time. As a function of time. Meaning that this solution, or this equation, has to be solved every single time step. This makes my life difficult, because dimensions of a typical finite element model is huge. It can easily consist of 1 million degrees of freedom, meaning that there's 1 million different ways that the structure can deform. Now, using this approach requires me to solve these 1 million degrees of freedom each time step. And this is too much, way too much, because my reference motion, the one that is telling me how is a large translation and large rotation, only needs 6 coordinates. 6 versus 1 million, they don't match. So I need to do something for my finite element model. And what I'm about to do in my finite element model is that I'm moving from nodal degrees of freedom to modal degrees of freedom. What is the essential difference? Nodal degrees of freedom consists of all degrees of freedom in my finite element model. It's telling me every single degrees of freedom in my model. My modal degrees of freedom are telling me what are the different ways that the entire structure can deform. How much each one of the ways contributes, that I don't know. That is called my modal coordinates. All right, so that's what I'm about to do. And now, how it goes such the way that if there is a finite element model with, let's say, 10 degrees of freedom, 10 nodal degrees of freedom, I can get to 10 different ways that the structure can deform. If it is 1 million nodal degrees of freedom, it's going to be 1 million different ways that it can deform. How much each one of the deformation contributes, that is something that is unknown at this time. Now, 1 million is a lot, and typically they are not equally important, but instead some of the ways that the structure can deform is more important than others. And now that's what makes it possible to ignore some of the deformation ways. And that's what I'm doing in my modal reduction technique. So that's in short, modal reduction technique. You were able to follow me? Can I ask that in a class quiz? Sure? Would you like me to repeat it? Yes and no? Okay, it really would help me to use a pen, but obviously not today.
Go to review menu.
Review menu
Review.
here,
Yes.
and then
And then ink on the right.
Ink, but it's
in the right,
but it's disabled.
Which one?
Then
Here, this one.
yeah, but it's
Hiding. Okay, I'll figure it out, but let me first explain this, because this is the essence of the. I think I have to be able to write to be able to explain this to you. Let me first explain without writing, to see if you're able to understand it. Okay, so, model reduction technique. So, in my finite element model, not model, I have certain number of degrees of freedom. Each one of the degrees of freedom are associated to the way that the nodal location can deform. So it could be translation, it could be rotation, it could be whatever you want. But those are called as a nodal degrees of freedom. Now, if you have a finite element model with a large number of degrees of freedom, you have a lot of points, each one of them can deform on its own way, making it possible to have a lot of nodal degrees. And that nodal degrees will be hard to solve in each one of the time steps because there's so many of them. Now, what I would like to do instead, I would like to use these nodal degrees of freedom to look at what are the different ways entire structure, not the single element, but entire structure can deform. Now, there will be equal amount of ways that the structure can deform as the number of nodal degrees of freedom. You still with me? Now, how much each one of the different ways will contribute with respect to time? I have no idea, but let me find it out by making those ways, or excuse me, amplification each one of associated each one of these deformations as an unknown, called as a modal degrees of freedom. That's what I'm doing next. I'm moving from nodal degrees of freedom to modal degrees of freedom. And now, because my finite element model consists of enormous amount of nodal degrees of freedom, enormous amount of modes. Some of the modes may be insignificant to me because they are not equally important, but some is more important than others. So I'm selecting the most important one and neglecting the others. That's the principle behind of the model reduction technique. You were able to follow me. So can I ask that as in-class quiz?
Can I ask you?
Yes.
How can I before which modes it's important? For example, if I will simulate a crash test or something like that, how can I know that this mode is important, this is not important?
Okay, so question is, how if you have originally 1 million degrees of freedom, and then you want to reduce them to say 100 degrees of freedom, 100 modal modes, 100 modes, how you can know that which are the most contributing ones? And the question is that you don't know that. It is based on your engineering knowledge. But it was outstanding question. It's really in the heart of the model reduction technique. I don't even know how to say that, how much I appreciate that. Maybe, but it was an outstanding question because it really is the essence of the model reduction technique. There are ways that helps you to make a decision. We will look at those ways a little later, but they are based on the mode, or they are based on the model that a lot of modes are contributing. And then later, you are eliminating the ones that are not very active. So it's like organizing work party. And you're asking people to get together, and then you're monitoring how much each one of these individuals are working. And then after half a day, you say that, okay, you were very active, rest, go home. This is a technique. So then you work rest of the day and you will see if this firing some people, if it makes any effect. Probably not. Because they were just drinking beer and chatting and smoking, so they were not contributing much. So that's the technique behind. So it's letting people to go, firing people. So it's that's the technique. Okay, back to this. All right, now, how is it we can get these different ways that the structure can deform? Well, we can get it by using eigenvalue analysis. Eigenvalue analysis is telling us natural frequencies of any structure and corresponding deformation modes. Now, what we are really interested in is these ways that the structure deform, not really the frequencies. Those are good to know, but really we don't care that much about that. But really we wanted to see what are the deformation modes. Okay, natural frequency, what that means. It means that this is a frequency that when you're introducing the forces in the same frequency that the natural frequency, the amplitude of the structure becomes really, really large. In theory, they go to infinity, but in reality, they don't. But because of the damping, because it's hard, because sometimes the frequency is changing when you really introducing the large amplitudes. Okay, but this tells you, this slide just shows you how is it you can carry out an eigenvalue analysis. Extremely important information is this. Eigenvalue analysis is only telling you the properties of the structure. It's not anything, it has nothing to do with the final responses. It is just looking at, how are the features? Like pretty much like in a finite element method, if you know the safe functions, can you tell me how is the response? Well, you can't. You can't because you don't know the forces. You only know the half of the story. Other half is a question mark. Here's the same kind of idea. Because look at the equation that is used to carry out eigenvalue analysis. It is this equation of motion, except extended applied forces are set to be equal to 0. So, half of the story is missing. How could you know the response if you don't know the forces? No way to know it. But we are not after the responses this time. We're just looking at the ways structure can deform. This is the only purpose we're doing this. No other purposes. Okay, so mathematically, well, of course, you don't do this in a numerical analysis. We don't do this way, but just to make this simple, this is a solution, and you substitute the solution here. This is how the equation reads, and now I can set this equation in the left-hand side first to be equal to 0, and you can figure out what are the omegas associated to places where it goes to 0. So you can get that using the determinant. And once you solve these eigenfrequencies, then you can get the corresponding eigenvectors by substituting omega one at a time to this equation. That's how it goes. Let's practice this in a second. But here, let's see if this is our common hobby, or is it just my hobby, this Twitter thing. So, is it or is it not? How is that they say that in Hamlet? Is it? They don't say is it, or they say live. I don't know how is that they say that. Okay, no. So is it going to be 100% or not? Yes, no.
Yes.
Close, very close. Okay, so good news and bad news. Good news is this. Look at the percentage. You can round this up to 100% easily. That's a good news. Bad news is that there's nothing to do with the neighboring elements. Nothing to do with that. And why is that? Because in the finite element method, the neighboring elements are accounted by overlapping the stiffness and mass matrices. That's how it goes. No clear interpretation, kind of. And you can build the case that this is correct because you're saying that I'm not clear enough. So I couldn't figure it out. What's the real interpretation? But the only correct one is first one. No worries, because today I have some really, really interesting in-class quizzes. Okay. So here, this is how the natural frequency look. So I have here kind of better to interpret this as a three 1 degrees of freedom system. 1 degrees of freedom because mass and spring. So 1 degrees of freedom, how many natural frequencies they have? 1. Just 1. And now I'm going to look at the system such the way that I keep on moving and keep on increasing the frequency. I'm looking when the frequency hits the natural frequency of these three different kind of structures. The first will be the one in, let me see your direction. Right, because that's the softest. That's where the lowest natural frequency will be. And now if you keep on increasing, you can see that, others are not doing much. Except the middle one is doing something. Now I see that you are getting close to the natural frequency of the structure that is in the right. Oh yeah, now this becomes a good example. Others are standing still, one is just moving. Because the natural, the system is actuated with the natural frequency that is corresponding to the structure in the rock. And now it really goes crazy, except that it can't go full crazy. Because the limitations you can get in the reality. So this is it. So this is that omega we are finding out. The way we found out that will be coming later from the mathematics. Okay, then you can guess what happens next. The middle one goes to this. Okay. And there are a lot of different similar kind of examples. So it goes to this. That's how it goes. And then you guess what's going to happen next. So it's going to be the one in the left. Now, this was Aiken frequency. The associated deformation mode looks something like this. And I have here just a few examples. This is my natural frequency, and associated deformation modes, which the ID number is actually 8. Let me take a look. Why 8? Why the ID number 8 is coming? What are the lower frequencies than this? 6 rigid body modes. Okay? But this is 8. 7, what is that? Same kind of mode, but look at the cross section. It is like rectangular cross section like this. This is this direction. This direction is softer than this direction. 7 is exactly the same mode, but outplayed. Okay? Then this is, what number is this? 9. Okay, yeah, makes sense. So 7 and 9 are same direction. And then my 10. And this is how it counted. This is how it gets started. So these are the first 3 ones, 10, depending how you wanted to look at that. And then once, this structure consists of 100,000 degrees of freedom, then there will be more and more complicated. And now I will show you how the last one will look at. Let me move here. Don't look at the ID numbers, but really the high frequencies will be something like this. Okay, think about the overall performance of the crane, and think about what is the contribution of this to overall performance. Can you live without this guy? Is this your lousy work? Would you like to fire this guy? You would like to let this person to go? Definitely. Let's fire him, because look at the contribution. Oh my God, he's not contributing much to our dream. It's like not significant at all. What about this person? Should we do something for this? I would still employ this person, because look at it. The local contribution is could be important for us. Could be. What about this? Maybe. But going back to your question, which one of these are important? That's a good question. Here comes an example that, this is a lengthy animation that shows an example of the modes that are enabled or disabled. Can you see the small window here? This says enabled or disabled. And then you can see the different modes. These are all enabled, all accounted so far. But soon I will neglect them. Okay. These are still very low frequencies. Frequency is still like 350, less than 350, so it's well, right? All enabled. But the higher we go, the more complicated the modes are, less they will contribute, as a rule of thumb. There may be some exceptions. The mode with the high ID number, it could be eventually a very important piece of information for us. Okay. These are enabled. Excuse me, disabled. Those are disabled. But you can see that there's many different ways. And they are not equally important. But how to do the selection, we need to get back to that. Let me play another video simultaneously. Oh, I cannot play it simultaneously. This is maybe an example that is more understandable. In this example, we were looking at the ways that hydraulic cylinders were wearing off. What was the mechanism that they were wearing off very rapidly? And the idea was that this is because of because of the lowering. It seems that the piston rod is actually touching the walls of this cylinder structure here. And we thought that this is the mechanism that is causing these ceilings to wear off really fast. And that's why we wanted to analyze this by using this kind of models. So we definitely, our assumption, hypothesis at the time was that, there is a mechanical contact between the piston rod and cylinder walls in this particular case. So that's why many of these bending modes were keep enabled all the time. And, that was the purpose of the model. Okay, but again, you can see that it becomes more and more details and more and less important as a rule of thumb. Okay. So let's move on. Now, let's do such that, let's have a break here because I really need to restart my computer to be able to make you some drawings. Okay? 10 minutes. Not 5, but 10 minutes. Okay?